They say you can judge a person by the company they keep. Margaret Chen kept company with books, thousands of them. Dusty encyclopedias, worn paperbacks, forgotten histories gathering cobwebs in the basement of Riverside Public Library. At 62, with reading glasses perpetually sliding down her nose and cardigans in every shade of beige, Margaret was invisible. The kind of person you'd ask for help finding the bathroom, then forget the moment you walked away. But on a frozen January morning, when 3 armed men stormed into the library's children's section and took 14 people hostage, Margaret didn't run. She didn't scream. She walked calmly to the front desk, picked up the phone, and said 5 words that would change everything. "This is CIPHER. I'm back." This is the story of what happens when the world's most dangerous codebreaker comes out of retirement, and why the quietest room in America became the loudest crime scene in a decade. January 14th, 9:47 a.m. Riverside Public Library, Minnesota. The heating system rattled like an old man's lungs. Margaret Chen sat at the returns desk, scanning books with the rhythmic beep, beep, beep that had become the soundtrack to her life. Across from her, Tyler, 22, library science major, 3 piercings, permanently attached to his phone, was supposed to be helping. He wasn't. "Did you see this?" Tyler held up his screen, showing a news alert. "Another bank got hit. 3rd one this month. FBI got nothing." Margaret glanced at the headline without interest. Cyber heist nets $40 million. Perpetrators use unbreakable code. She scanned another book. Beep. "They're calling them the equation," Tyler continued, ignoring her disinterest, "because they leave these crazy math problems at the crime scenes, like taunting the cops. Nobody can solve them." How unfortunate. Beep. Tyler finally looked up from his phone, studying her. "You know what's weird, Margaret? You've worked here, 15 years? And I realize I don't know anything about you. Like, where'd you even come from before this?"
Margaret's hands paused just for a fraction of a second. Then she resumed scanning. "Accounting," she lied smoothly. "Very boring. Returns cart needs emptying, Tyler." He groaned but grabbed the cart, wheeling it toward the stacks. Margaret watched him go, then allowed herself one slow breath. 15 years. 15 years of perfect invisibility, of being nobody, of mornings that smelled like old paper and afternoons that tasted like cheap coffee. 15 years since she'd been CIPHER, the NSA's prize asset, the woman who broke the unbreakable. 15 years since the Berlin incident. She pushed the memory away like an unwanted book. That life was cataloged, shelved, and archived in a section she never visited. The automatic doors whooshed open. Cold January air rushed in along with 3 men. Margaret noticed them immediately, though she gave no sign. You don't survive 2 decades in intelligence without developing instincts that never fully retire. The men moved wrong, too aware of their surroundings, too controlled. The first one, tall, angular face, expensive watch, scanned the room in a grid pattern, left to right, top to bottom, threat assessment. The second was shorter, compact, with hands that stayed near his jacket pockets, concealed carry almost certainly. The third was enormous, blocking most of the doorway, muscle. Probably the least dangerous intellectually, but the most dangerous if things got physical. They split up. Tall and angular walked toward the computer lab, compact and twitchy headed for the children's section. The giant took a position near the doors. Margaret's pulse didn't quicken. Years of training had taught her body not to betray her mind. She simply noted the positions, cataloged the threat level, and returned to scanning books. Beep, beep, beep. The library had 43 people in it at that moment. She'd counted automatically when she arrived at 7 a.m. 12 adults browsing, 8 using computers, 14 at story time, 6 staff, 1 security guard. Harold, the guard, was 67 and had a bad hip. His taser was in his locker because the battery was dead. Margaret knew this because she noticed everything and forgot nothing. The children's section erupted in screams. "Nobody move!" Tyler dropped the book he was holding. Across the library, people's heads snapped up from their reading. Harold lurched to his feet, reaching for a taser that wasn't there.
Compact and twitchy had pulled out a gun, a Sig Sauer P365, Margaret noted distantly, and was pointing it at the storytime circle where Miss Patricia had frozen mid-sentence, a copy of Where the Wild Things Are trembling in her hands. "Everybody stay calm," Tall and Angular announced, walking back from the computer lab with surprising casualness. "Nobody needs to get hurt. We're just going to be here a little while." The giant by the door pulled down the security gate with one massive heave, sealing everyone inside. The metal screamed against the tracks. "Oh, God," Weiler whispered beside Margaret. His face had gone the color of old newspaper. "Oh, God, Margaret, what do we—" "Quiet," she murmured, not unkindly, but with absolute authority. Weiler's mouth snapped shut. Tall and Angular, clearly the leader, walked to the center of the main floor. He moved like someone comfortable being in charge. Margaret revised her assessment. Not military, too individualistic. Private sector, maybe, or criminal with high-level experience. "Here's how this works," he announced to the room. His voice was educated, East Coast accent, probably Boston. "You all do exactly what we say, and in a few hours you walk out of here with a story to tell your friends. You don't do what we say." He shrugged. "Well, let's not find out." A child started crying in the storytime area, a little girl, maybe 5, with pigtails. "Make her shut up," Compact and Twitchy snapped, waving his gun at Miss Patricia. Patricia pulled the girl close, shushing her with shaking hands. "What do you want?" Harold called out, trying to sound authoritative despite the tremor in his voice. "The library doesn't have money. The register's got maybe $200. We're not here for your pathetic cash drawer," Tall and Angular interrupted. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked up at the crowd. "We're here for information. This library has a special collection in the basement, historical documents from a Cold War-era communications facility. We need access to those files." Margaret's blood turned to ice water. No, not those files.
The basement archive contained documents from Station CIPHER, a defunct NSA outpost that had operated in Minnesota during the 1960s to 80s. When the station closed, the files were deemed historically insignificant and donated to local institutions. Margaret had personally ensured they ended up here, buried under decades of municipal records and forgotten local histories. She'd thought they were safe. She'd thought nobody would ever look. She'd been wrong. "The basement's locked," Harold said. "I don't have clearance. Only the head librarian is on vacation," Tall and Angular finished. "Yes, we know. Mr. Patterson is currently in Tampa visiting his daughter, which is why we're here today." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Fortunately, locks can be broken. CIPHER, start moving the hostages. Children's section, keep them contained. We have work to do." The giant, apparently named CIPHER, which would be funny if it weren't so cosmically ironic, began herding people toward the children's section. The computer users, the browsers, everyone shuffled forward with their hands visible, making themselves small and non-threatening. Margaret moved with them, becoming part of the crowd. She kept her head down, her posture submissive. Just another scared civilian, nothing to see. As they were corralled into the storytime area, she did rapid calculations. 3 hostiles, confirmed armed, probably more weapons than currently visible. The library had 4 exits, but the front gate was sealed. Fire exits would trigger alarms. Windows were old, double-paned, difficult to break quietly. 14 children, ages approximately 4 to 10. 12 adults, various fitness levels. The youngest adult hostage was Tyler at 22. The oldest was Mrs. Morrison, 81, who came in every Tuesday and Thursday to read romance novels. Margaret filed it all away. Tall and Angular typed on his phone again, then called out, "We're going to make this simple. I know some of you have phones. Turn them off and put them in this bag." He tossed a canvas bag to the giant. "Anyone I catch with a phone after this gets to explain why they thought they were smarter than me." People reluctantly deposited their devices. Tyler looked at his phone like he was being asked to surrender a limb, but he dropped it in. Margaret didn't have a phone. She'd never owned a smartphone. They were tracking devices that people willingly carried. No thank you. As the giant collected phones, Tall and Angular walked to the desk where Margaret had been working. He picked up the library computer mouse, clicked a few times, and frowned. "Which one of you is the tech person here?" he called out. Silence.
Come on, every library has someone who knows the systems. Who is it? Tyler's face was performing complex gymnastics as he tried to decide whether to speak or stay silent. Before he could do something heroic and stupid, Margaret touched his arm. "Don't," she whispered. But Harold, foolish, brave Harold, raised his hand. "I know the basics. What do you need?" "Perfect," Tall and Angular gestured. "Come here." As Harold limped forward, Margaret caught the leader's micro-expression when he saw the limp. Calculation. Assessment. This wasn't a man who left things to chance. "Harold, is it?" Tall and Angular read the name tag. "Harold, I need you to access your basement archive database. I need to know exactly where files from 1975 to 1985, station CIPHER designation, are located." Harold blinked. Station CIPHER? I've never heard of—" "Don't play stupid. The files exist. They were donated in 1994. I need their location." "Sir, I really don't know." The slap echoed through the library like a gunshot. Harold stumbled back, hand to his face. Someone gasped. The little girl with pigtails started crying again. "Try harder," Tall and Angular said pleasantly. Margaret's hands clenched in her lap. The old instincts were screaming at her. Threat assessment, tactical analysis. 3 hostiles, yes, but sloppy. The giant was positioned wrong, blocking his own leader's line of fire. Compact and twitchy kept looking at the children, distracted, possibly having second thoughts. She could end this in 40 seconds, maybe less, but she'd sworn she was done. No more violence, no more CIPHER, just books and quiet mornings and the simple life of Margaret Chen, librarian. "I'll try the database," Harold said, his voice shaking. He sat at the computer, fingers unsteady on the keyboard. Margaret watched from the storytime area, 30 feet away. She couldn't see the screen, but she knew what Harold would find, or rather what he wouldn't find. The station CIPHER files weren't in the digital database. They'd been cataloged using the old card system, before digitization. You'd need to go to the actual card catalog in the basement to locate them. She'd set it up that way deliberately. Harold clicked and typed for 2 minutes while everyone waited in tense silence. Finally, he looked up. "I'm sorry, nothing's coming up under Station CIPHER. Maybe the files were transferred to the Historical Society? Or the university?" "They're here," Tall and Angular said. But now there was an edge to his voice, frustration. He turned to Compact and Twitchy. "Reese, Plan B." Reese, apparently that was Compact and Twitchy's name, looked unhappy. "Boss, we said no Plan B unless—" "I'm saying it now." Reese pulled out his phone, dialed, and after a moment said, "Yeah, it's me. We need the package activated." I know, but he's insisting." Okay, yeah." He hung up and looked at his boss. 20 minutes. Margaret's mind raced. Package? What package? Tall and Angular smiled at the hostages. "All right, folks, slight change of plans. We're going to wait here a bit. Stay quiet, stay still, and everything will be fine." 20 minutes turned into 30. The children were getting restless, hungry, scared. Miss Patricia did her best, reading to them in a soft voice, but even Where the Wild Things Are couldn't compete with the armed men pacing the library. Tyler leaned close to Margaret. "What do we do?" he whispered, barely audible. "We wait," she murmured back. "But someone's got to—" "We wait." She said it with enough finality that Tyler subsided, though he kept shooting glances at the exits, clearly mentally rehearsing some foolhardy escape attempt. Margaret returned to her observations. Tall and angular, kept checking his phone. Reese was sweating despite the cold. The giant, actual name still unknown, was the calmest of the three, which suggested either experience or psychopathy, possibly both. At 10:47 a.m., exactly 52 minutes after the takeover began, the loading dock entrance banged open. Everyone jumped. The giant moved toward the sound, gun drawn. A woman entered, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing tactical pants and a black jacket. She was pulling a wheeled equipment case. "About time," Tall and Angular said.
The woman ignored him, rolling her case to the basement door. She knelt, opened it, and pulled out what looked like a laptop connected to some kind of scanner device. "Is that what I think it is?" Tyler breathed. Margaret's stomach sank. She knew exactly what it was. Ground-penetrating radar with thermal imaging. Military grade, probably borrowed or stolen from a private security contractor. With that equipment, they could map the entire basement, locate high-density paper clusters like archived file boxes, and pinpoint exactly where the station's CIPHER documents were hidden, all without ever going downstairs. The woman worked in silence, moving the scanner across the floor in a grid pattern. Margaret watched the laptop screen from a distance. Thermal blooms appeared, color-coded. Blue for concrete, green for empty space, yellow for standard density, red for high density. The woman moved to the right, more blue, more green. Then she hit a section of floor near the romance paperback section. Red, deep, bright red. "There," the woman said, first words she'd spoken. Her voice was flat, professional. Below the east corner, approximately 8 feet down, clustered thermal signature consistent with paper files in archival boxes, high density, exactly where you said they'd be. Tall and Angular smiled. "Excellent work, Nina. Gentlemen, we have a location. Time to dig." They weren't actually going to dig. The basement had stairs, but Margaret understood the implication. They knew where to look now. The rest was just logistics. "Harold," Tall and Angular called, "you're going to take Reese downstairs and help him locate those boxes. If you run, if you scream, if you do anything other than exactly what you're told, the children up here start having a very bad day. Understood?" Harold nodded, ashen-faced. As Reese and Harold headed for the basement stairs, Margaret made her decision. She'd known deep down that this moment would come eventually. You don't spend 20 years breaking codes that nations kill to protect and expect to fade into obscurity forever. The past always finds you. Always. But she'd hoped. She'd hoped for more quiet mornings, more beeping scanners and returned books, more invisibility. That hope was gone now, because Margaret recognized the signature of those men's operation, the precision, the intelligence gathering, the specific target. This wasn't random. Someone had sent them. Someone who knew about Station CIPHER, who knew what was in those files. Someone who knew about her. And if they got those files, if they decoded what was in them, if they understood what Margaret had buried there, people would die. Not here, not now, but in Jakarta, in Berlin, in Moscow. Agents in the field, sources she'd run, operations she'd managed, all the people who'd trusted CIPHER to keep them safe. She couldn't let that happen. Margaret caught Miss Patricia's eye. The younger woman was still holding the little girl with pigtails, whispering reassurances. Margaret gave her the smallest nod, a signal that meant nothing to anyone else, but that Patricia, bless her, seemed to understand meant something was about to happen.
Tyler was still beside her, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Tyler," Margaret whispered, "in 30 seconds you're going to need to be very brave." "What? Margaret, do you know where the circuit breaker is? In the maintenance closet?" "Yeah, but when the lights go out, you're going to count to 5. Then you're going to get every child to the floor, flat, heads down. Can you do that?" Tyler stared at her. "Margaret, what are you talking about? What lights?" Margaret didn't answer. She was looking at the clock on the wall, 11:52 a.m. Reese and Harold would be in the basement now. That left 2 hostels on the main floor, the Giant by the entrance, Nina by the loading dock with her equipment. Tall and angular was standing near the center, texting on his phone again. 3 targets, 2 exits, 14 children who needed to stay safe. Margaret stood up. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly in the tense silence. "I need to use the restroom." Every head turned toward her. Tall and angular looked up from his phone, annoyed. "Sit down." "I'm 62 years old with a small bladder," Margaret said apologetically. "I've been holding it for an hour. I really must—" "Sit down." Margaret stayed standing. "It's just across the hall, right there." She pointed to the bathroom door, 20 feet away. "I'll leave the door open if you'd like. I simply must. Lady, I don't care if you piss yourself. Sit down or I'll make you sit down." Margaret looked at him, really looked at him, and for just a moment she let the mask slip, let him see who was actually standing in front of him. His expression changed, just a flicker, confusion, then something like recognition, though he couldn't have known why. "No," Margaret said quietly, "I don't think I will." Then she turned and walked calmly toward the maintenance closet instead of the bathroom. "Hey!" The Giant started moving toward her. "Hey, lady, stop!" Margaret opened the closet door, found the circuit breaker panel. She'd studied this panel 15 years ago when she first started working here, the same way she'd studied everything about the library. Know your environment, know your resources. The Giant was 15 feet away, raising his gun. Margaret pulled the main breaker. The library plunged into darkness.
Darkness is a strange thing. Most people panic in it. They freeze or they flail or they call out. Their brain, deprived of its primary sense, shorts out momentarily. Margaret Chen had been trained to do the opposite. In darkness, she came alive. The Giant fired where she'd been standing. The muzzle flash lit up the space like a strobe, one brilliant snapshot of shelving units and scattered books, and Margaret no longer there. She'd moved the instant the lights died, muscle memory from 1,000 training exercises taking over. 3 steps left, duck, roll behind the reference desk. The Giant's eyes would still be adjusted to light. He'd be blind for crucial seconds. She heard Tyler counting. 3, 4, 5. "Down! Everybody down!" Good boy. She'd make sure he got a raise if they survived this. More gunshots, wild, panicked. The Giant was shooting at sounds now, at imagined threats. Someone screamed. "Stop shooting!" Tall and Angular's voice cut through the chaos. "You idiot! You'll hit the hostages! Nina, get the emergency lights on." "Working on it!" Nina's voice came from the loading dock area. Margaret didn't wait for the lights. She moved through the darkness like a ghost, using her perfect mental map of the library. 12 steps to the circulation desk, hurdle the barrier. 4 steps to the staff area, the desk drawer where they kept the scissors, the box cutters, the supplies. Not weapons, not really, but CIPHER could make weapons from anything. She grabbed the letter opener, 8 inches, steel, sharp enough, and kept moving. The fire exit was to her left, but she wasn't leaving, not yet. First, she had to eliminate the threats, starting with the Giant. She heard his heavy breathing 10 feet away, heard the rustle of his jacket as he swung his gun around randomly. Poor training, no discipline. Margaret moved closer, silent steps, weight on the balls of her feet. She'd done this in embassy hallways in Damascus, in hotel rooms in Prague, in more places than she cared to remember. 5 feet,
3 feet, close enough to smell his cologne, something expensive and overpowering. She struck the back of his knee with her foot, a precise kick to the nerve cluster. His leg buckled. As he fell, she was already moving, wrapping her left arm around his throat, the letter opener pressing against the carotid artery in her right hand. "Drop the gun," she whispered in his ear, "or I open the artery, and you've got 90 seconds before unconsciousness, 60 before irreversible brain damage." The giant froze. She felt him processing, calculating odds.
"I'm 62, Margaret continued conversationally, "with arthritis in both hands. If I shake, and I might, it's been a stressful morning, this blade goes right through. Drop the gun." The pistol clattered to the floor. "Good. Now the backup piece. Ankle holster, I'm guessing?" A pause. Then another gun hit the floor. Emergency lights flickered on, dim red emergency lighting that cast everything in a horror movie glow. In that light, everyone could now see the tiny librarian holding a letter opener to the throat of the enormous man who'd been terrorizing them moments ago. "Margaret?" Tyler's voice was disbelieving. "What the—" "Stay down," Margaret commanded. Then louder, "Weapons on the floor. All of you, now." Tall and angular had his gun out, pointing at her, but his hands were shaking slightly. He was afraid. "Good." "You're making a mistake," he said. "I've made many mistakes," Margaret replied. "This isn't one of them. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Station CIPHER files, encrypted field reports from 1975 to 1985. Specifically, you're after the Nightingale protocols, deep cover identities for European theater operatives. Half of them are still active. The other half are dead, but their networks aren't. Those files are worthless without the decryption key. She smiled thinly, which only one person has. Tall and Angular's eyes widened. "You, me, your CIPHER, the actual CIPHER, was, I'm retired. Then you know what's in those files. You know what they're worth. I know exactly what they're worth, which is why you're not getting them." Nina had moved during this exchange, circling toward a better angle. Margaret tracked her with peripheral vision, another one with training, more dangerous than the men. "Stand down, Nina," Tall and Angular said quietly. "She's the real deal." "We have 14 children as leverage," Nina said coldly. "And I have your colleague's carotid artery as leverage. Which expires faster, a hostage negotiation or blood loss? Would you like to run that math?" From the basement, they heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Reese emerged, gun drawn, taking in the scene. "What the hell happened?" "We have a complication." "Complication? Where's CIPHER?" Reese saw his enormous partner being held hostage by a senior citizen. His expression went through several interesting gymnastics. "You have got to be kidding me." "Wish I was."
Margaret's arms were starting to ache. The letter opener was growing heavy. Adrenaline would only carry her so far. She was, after all, actually 62, with actual arthritis. Time to end this. "Here's what happens next," she said. "You leave. All 3 of you, right now. You walk out, you don't come back, and you tell whoever sent you that CIPHER sends her regards." "Can't do that," Tall and Angular said. "We have a contract. Then you'll die fulfilling it. Your choice." Stalemate. Margaret could feel it crystallizing. Nobody wanted to make the first move, because the first move would trigger everything else. Gunfire, chaos, death. Probably a lot of death. And then Tyler, brave, stupid Tyler, decided to be a hero. He lunged from his position on the floor, grabbing for Reese's gun. "Run! Everybody run!" Everything happened at once. Reese spun, gun tracking Tyler. Nina drew her weapon, aiming at Margaret. The giant tried to wrench free. Margaret had to choose, keep her hostage or save Tyler. It wasn't even a choice. She released the giant, threw the letter opener at Reese, not to kill, just to distract, and dove toward Tyler, hitting him in a tackle that sent both of them sprawling behind the reference desk as gunshots erupted. Books exploded above them. Wooden shelving splintered. The children screamed. Margaret yanked Tyler down, covering him with her body as bullets chewed up their cover. "Stay down. Don't move." "You're insane!" Tyler yelled over the gunfire. "Frequently noted," Margaret agreed. The shooting stopped. In the ringing silence that followed, Tall and Angular's voice. "Last chance, CIPHER. The files or the hostages start dying." Margaret's mind raced through scenarios. The police would be coming. Someone outside would have heard the shots. But police response time was 8 to 12 minutes in this neighborhood. They had maybe 5 minutes before sirens. 5 minutes was an eternity in a hostage situation. "Margaret," Tyler whispered, "what do we do?" She looked at him, at his young, terrified face, at the pierced ear and the smartphone-shaped tan line on his wrist, and the life he'd barely started living. "We," Margaret said, "are going to renegotiate." She raised her voice. "All right, you win. I'll take you to the files." Silence. "That easy?" Tall and Angular sounded suspicious. "That easy," Margaret confirmed. She stood slowly, hands visible. "You want the files. I'm the only one who knows exactly where they are and how to access them. Let's make a trade. I give you the location, you leave the hostages alone." "How do I know you won't lead us into a trap? How do I know you won't kill everyone anyway?" Margaret countered. "Neither of us is operating on trust here. We're operating on mutual incentive. You get what you want, these people live. Simple transaction." More silence. I could practically hear him thinking. "Just you," he finally said. "Everyone else stays here where Nina can see them. You try anything, anyone makes a sound, she starts shooting. Understood?" "Understood." Margaret walked toward the basement stairs. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, but her face remained calm. Just a scared librarian trying to survive. Tall and Angular and Reese flanked her, guns ready. The giant, nursing what would be a spectacular bruise on his throat, glared at her with pure hatred. "I'm impressed," Tall and Angular said as they descended the stairs. "Former NSA? CIA? The less you know about me, the longer you live," Margaret replied.
The basement was exactly as she remembered. Fluorescent lights, concrete floors, metal shelving units stretching into the gloom like a labyrinth. This was where the forgotten went. Old tax records, defunct city planning documents, historical newspapers from the 1950s. And, buried in Section G, Row 14, behind a false wall of Minneapolis Tribune archives from 1978, the station CIPHER files. "This way," Margaret said. They walked through the maze. Margaret kept her breathing steady, her mind clear. The files were just ahead. Once they saw them, once they understood what they were looking at, that's when she'd make her move. They reached Section G. Margaret pulled aside the newspapers, revealing a locked metal cabinet set into the wall. "That's it," Reese said. "That's it." "Open it," Tall and Angular ordered. Margaret pulled a key from her cardigan pocket. Yes, she'd been carrying it for 15 years, just in case, and unlocked the cabinet. Inside were 12 boxes, plain, unmarked, identical. "Which one has the Nightingale protocols?" Tall and Angular demanded. Margaret smiled. "All of them, and none of them." She pulled out box 7 and opened it. Inside were hundreds of documents covered in seemingly random letters and numbers. Pure code, completely encrypted. "What is this?" Reese breathed. "This is what happens when the world's best cryptographer decides something needs to stay hidden," Margaret said. "Every document is encrypted with a different cipher: substitution, transposition, polyalphabetic, steganographic. Some use keys from Russian literature. Some use prime numbers. Some use keys that only existed in my head." She pulled out another box. "It would take a team of codebreakers 20 years to decrypt even one box, and that's assuming they knew what decryption methods to use." Tall and Angular's face had gone very still. "You're saying these files are useless?" I'm saying these files are useless to you, but someone sent you here. Someone who thought they could break these codes. Someone who either doesn't know about the encryption or doesn't care." She looked at him directly. "Who's your employer?" "You think I'm going to tell you that?" "I think you figured out you're in over your head," Margaret said quietly. "This isn't a simple theft job. Someone sent you after intelligence you can't possibly extract, which means either they're stupid, unlikely, or they knew you'd fail and sent you anyway." She let that sink in. "You're disposable, all of you. This was never about the files. It was about forcing me out of retirement. Someone wanted to know if CIPHER still existed. Now they know." Tall and Angular's gun wavered. "You're lying." "Am I? Think about your briefing. Were there any unusual requirements? Any specific instructions that seemed odd at the time?" His silence was answer enough.
Margaret pressed her advantage. "You were told to make noise, weren't you? Don't slip in quietly. Make a scene. Take hostages. Maximum visibility. Why? Because someone wanted me to react, wanted to see what I'd do. This is insane. Check your phone. I bet you've got a message waiting, something you weren't expecting." Tall and Angular pulled out his phone. His face went pale. "What does it say?" Margaret asked. When he didn't answer, Reese grabbed the phone. He read aloud. "Objective complete. Extraction canceled. Dispose of all assets, including personnel." "Boss, what the hell?" "Assets, including personnel," Margaret repeated. "You know what that means." "We've been burned," Tall and Angular whispered. "Worse, you've been set up. When the police arrive, and they're maybe 3 minutes out now, they're going to find you holding a library hostage. They're going to find weapons, stolen equipment, and attempted theft of classified documents. How many laws is that? 20? 30? And whoever hired you gets exactly what they wanted, confirmation that I'm still active, still protecting these files. They got their intel, and you get 20 to life." Reese looked like he might be sick. "We have to run now." "And go where?" Tall and Angular snapped. "We're burned. Our faces are probably all over law enforcement databases already. Our accounts are frozen. We're ghosts." "Not quite," Margaret said. "I can help." Both men stared at her. "You can—" "What?" Tall and Angular said slowly. "I can make you disappear. New identities, clean records, fresh start. I've done it before." She had, more times than she could count, for assets who needed extraction, for sources who got too hot. "But it'll cost you." "We don't have money. You just said our accounts are frozen." "I don't want money. I want information. Who hired you? Who knew about Station CIPHER? Who's trying to draw me out?" Sirens in the distance, getting closer. "We're out of time," Reese said frantically. Tall and Angular looked at Margaret, really looked at her, calculating, weighing options. Finally, the equation. Margaret's blood went cold. "What?" "The equation. The cyber heist group. They didn't hire us directly. It came through cutouts, anonymous transfers, but their signature was all over the contract. Those math problems they leave at crime scenes, one of them was in our briefing package, like a calling card." The pieces clicked into place in Margaret's mind. The bank heists, the unbreakable codes, someone smart enough to taunt law enforcement, rich enough to hire professional thieves, and informed enough to know about Station CIPHER, someone who wanted CIPHER's attention. "Who leads the equation?" Margaret demanded. "We don't know. Nobody knows. They're ghosts." The sirens were very close now. Margaret made a decision. "All right, upstairs, quickly. We don't have much time." They ran back up the stairs. On the main floor, chaos had erupted. Nina had heard the sirens, too, and was arguing with the giant about whether to shoot the hostages or run. "Stand down," Tall and Angular yelled. "We're leaving, now." "What about—" Nina started. "Forget it. We're burned. Move." Margaret turned to the hostages, still huddled in the children's section. Tyler was at the front, shielding the younger kids. "Tyler," Margaret called, "in my desk, bottom right drawer, there's a red binder. Bring it to me." He stared at her. "What? Margaret, they're leaving. Just let them—" "Now, Tyler." Something in her voice moved him.
He scrambled to the desk, found the binder, brought it back. Margaret flipped it open. Inside were documents she'd prepared years ago, just in case. Passports, birth certificates, driver's licenses, clean identities with complete paper trails. The work of a paranoid intelligence officer who knew that the past never stayed buried forever. She handed sets to each of the 3 criminals. Canada, there's a crossing at International Falls that has minimal security. These will get you through. After that, you're on your own. Tall and Angular stared at the documents. Why are you helping us? Because the equation is a bigger problem than you are, and because everyone deserves a second chance, even thieves. The police were outside now. Bullhorns, shouted commands. "Loading dock," she said. "There's a delivery truck parked there. Driver's on break. Keys are in the visor. Go, now." They went. Nina grabbed her equipment. The giant took point. Reese and Tall and Angular followed. At the door, Tall and Angular looked back. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. Just disappear. And if the equation contacts you again, tell them CIPHER says hello." Then they were gone, out into the cold Minnesota morning. Margaret turned to the hostages. "Is everyone all right? Anyone hurt?" Shaken heads, tears, but no injuries. The front gate began to rise, police cutting through the lock. Officers poured in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Margaret sat down at her desk, put her hands in plain sight, and waited to explain herself to people who would never understand what had really happened here. Tyler sat next to her, still shaking. "Margaret, what the hell just happened? Who are you?" She looked at him, this earnest young man who'd tried to be brave, who'd stood up when he could have hidden. "I'm a librarian, Tyler. That's all." "That's not all. That can't be all." "It's all I want to be," she said softly. And for a moment, in the chaos of police and paramedics and confused hostages, Margaret Chen allowed herself to hope that might actually still be possible. She was wrong, but she wouldn't know that until later when she got home and found the message waiting for her. The message written in code. Her code. The code only one other person in the world could possibly know.
The police questioning lasted 4 hours. Margaret answered everything honestly. Mostly. Yes, she'd cut the power. Yes, she'd held one of the men hostage. Yes, she'd let them escape. What she didn't mention was the false identities, or station CIPHER, or the fact that she used to be someone very different. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to Mrs. Morrison, the romance reader, sat across from her in interview room 2, looking exhausted. "Miss Chen, I need you to understand how this looks. 3 armed men take a library hostage. You, a 62-year-old librarian, somehow disarm one, intimidate the others, and then let them go. That's not normal civilian behavior." "I watch a lot of true crime documentaries," Margaret said blandly. "This isn't funny." "I'm not laughing, Detective. I did what I had to do to protect the children. The men were leaving anyway. I didn't see the point in forcing a confrontation that might get people killed." Morrison rubbed her temples. "The FBI wants to talk to you." "About what?" "About why 3 professionals targeted your library specifically, about what they were looking for in that basement, about your background, which frankly is surprisingly thin for someone who's lived here 15 years. Margaret's heartbeat didn't change. "I'm happy to talk with them." "Really?" "Really. Though I should warn you, my background check will show exactly what I told you. Accounting, boring life, no criminal record. Because that's what I am, Detective. Boring." Morrison didn't look convinced. "You're free to go for now, but don't leave town. We'll be in touch." Tyler was waiting outside the police station, bouncing nervously. "Oh, thank God. They said you could go, but I wasn't sure if... Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Did they... "I'm fine, Tyler. Just tired." "Margaret, I need to know." "No," she said gently. "You really don't. Trust me on this."
She took a taxi home. Her apartment was a small one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator was broken, as usual. She climbed the stairs slowly, feeling every one of her 62 years. Her cat, Turing, named after the famous codebreaker, a little joke only she understood, greeted her at the door with annoyed meows about delayed dinner. I know, Margaret murmured, filling his bowl. Rough day at the office. She made tea, Earl Grey, too hot, the way she'd learned to drink it in London 30 years ago. She sat in her reading chair by the window and tried to pretend today had been normal. It didn't work, because sitting on her coffee table was an envelope that hadn't been there this morning. Margaret stared at it. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper. No address, no stamp, which meant someone had hand-delivered it, someone who'd gotten past her locks, which weren't standard locks, but ones she'd installed herself using techniques learned from a very creative burglar in Prague. Someone good. She picked up the envelope, opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in numbers. 43, 15, 18, 23, 8, 5, 18, 5. 92, 15, 21, 27, 5, 2, 5, 5, 14. 23, 1, 9, 20, 9, 14, 7, 6, 15, 18. And below the numbers, a message in plain text. CIPHER plays chess. The equation plays quantum chess. We've been waiting for you. The game begins now. P.S. The bank jobs were just the opening move. Check your old files. Berlin, 2009. Someone survived. Someone remembers. Margaret's hand started shaking. The teacup rattled against the saucer. Berlin, 2009. The incident that made her retire. The mission that went wrong in every possible way. The night she'd left someone behind. She stood, walked to her bedroom, pulled aside the bed. Underneath was a floorboard that looked identical to all the others, but came up if you knew where to press. In the hidden space beneath were 3 items: a pistol, maintained, loaded, ready; a leather-bound journal, her field notes from the last 20 years; and a burner phone, charged, unused for 15 years. Margaret took all 3. She sat on the bed and decoded the numbers. Simple substitution cipher, A equals 1, B equals 2, and so on. Child's play. The message read, "CIPHER, where have you been? Waiting for you." She opened the journal to Berlin, 2009. Her handwriting, neat and precise, documented everything. The mission parameters, the target, a Russian oligarch funneling money to terrorist organizations. The plan, infiltrate his charity gala, access his private server, copy the financial records. The complication, his head of security, a former Spetsnaz operator named Alexei Volkov, who'd made her at the coat check. The gunfight that followed, the explosion, the fire. She'd escaped, barely, with the data, but without one of her assets, a young analyst named Daniel Park, who'd been providing local support. The official report said Daniel died in the fire. They'd found his dental records in the rubble. But Margaret had always wondered, because she never saw the body, and Daniel was smart, very smart. Smart enough to fake his death if he needed to. Smart enough to spend 15 years planning revenge. Smart enough to build something like the equation. Her phone rang, the burner phone. Margaret stared at it. Only 3 people in the world had that number. 2 were dead. Which left? She answered. "Hello, Daniel?" Silence. Then laughter. Young, bright, delighted laughter. "Oh, Margaret, I've missed you. Did you like my opening move?" The bank jobs were crude. They were misdirection, like stage magic. Watch the flashy trick while the real work happens elsewhere. You taught me that. I taught you to disappear, to stay safe. You taught me to survive, and I did. In that burning building, in the years after, in the darkness you left me in. His voice hardened. Did you know what they did to me, Margaret, Volkov's people, when they found me in the wreckage? Daniel, did you know 3 years in a black site prison because they thought I was you? 3 years of interrogation, torture, mind games. And do you know what kept me alive? The certainty that my handler, brilliant, unstoppable CIPHER, would come for me. Margaret closed her eyes. I thought you were dead.
You didn't check. You took the official report and ran. Left me to rot. I'm sorry. Sorry. He laughed again, but it was hollow now. Sorry doesn't rebuild a life, Margaret. Sorry doesn't give me back the years. But revenge is productive. Revenge has purpose. What do you want? I want what you took from me. Identity, agency, power. So I built the equation. Brilliant minds, all with grudges against the intelligence community. We take what we want, and we leave puzzles, codes that prove we're smarter than everyone chasing us. You're drawing attention. Eventually someone will catch you. Let them try. But first, I want you to solve something for me. A real puzzle, not like the toys I leave for the FBI. There was a pause, and then his voice dropped. I've hidden something in your city, a code that will lead to, let's call it a significant incident, something that will hurt the people who hurt me. You have 72 hours to solve it and stop me. Why tell me it all? Because I want to prove I'm better than you now. Smarter, faster, more ruthless. You taught me everything you knew, Margaret. Now I'm going to show you I learned better than you ever did. The first clue is already in motion. Look for the pattern. You always loved patterns. The line went dead. Margaret sat in the darkness of her bedroom, holding a phone that connected her to ghosts. Then she did what she'd sworn she'd never do again. She became CIPHER.
Margaret didn't sleep that night. Sleep was for people without problems. She had 72 hours to decode a threat from someone who knew exactly how she thought. She spread the journal pages across her kitchen table, cross-referencing them with news reports on her laptop. Yes, she had a laptop. She'd lied to Tyler about the smartphone thing being a privacy concern. Really, it was about leaving fewer digital footprints. The equation's bank heists followed a pattern. 3 jobs, 3 cities, each exactly 28 days apart. The codes they left behind were mathematical, probability theory, chaos mathematics, quantum algorithms. But Daniel knew she was better with linguistic ciphers than mathematical ones. He wouldn't give her a puzzle she could solve easily. He'd make it hurt. The phone rang, her regular phone this time. Hello? Miss Chen, this is Detective Morrison. Sorry to call so late, but we've got a situation. There's been an incident at the University of Minnesota Mathematics Department. Someone broke in, but instead of stealing anything, they left something, a puzzle, and they left your name. Margaret was already pulling on her coat. I'll be right there. The mathematics department building was crawling with police. Detective Morrison met her at the entrance, looking haggard. Explain, Margaret said. Morrison led her to a lecture hall. Written on the blackboard in perfect, precise handwriting was a series of equations. Integral of love dx equals betrayal plus c. limit of trust approaches 0 equals abandonment. Sigma of years in darkness equals revenge. Below that, dear teacher, show your work. You have 71 hours, your best student. Does this mean anything to you? Morrison asked. Margaret stared at the board. The mathematical notation was window dressing. The real message was in the words themselves: love, betrayal, trust, abandonment, revenge. Daniel's story written in the language of mathematics. It's personal, Margaret said quietly. Personal how? I can't tell you that, Detective. Miss Chen. But I can stop him. I just need access to some information. Morrison crossed her arms. What kind of information? Historical records, intelligence archives, things that are classified. You're a librarian. You don't have clearance for— I did once, Margaret interrupted. Make a call. Ask for Marcus Webb, NSA Deputy Director of Operations. Tell him CIPHER needs a favor. Morrison stared at her. You're not joking. I've never been more serious in my life.
It took 4 hours, but Morrison made the call. At 3 a.m., Margaret's burner phone rang again. Different number this time. This is Webb. Marcus. It's been a while. A long pause. Jesus Christ, we thought you were dead. I got better. I need access to the Berlin files, 2009. Specifically, anything related to Daniel Park. That operation is sealed. National security concerns. Daniel Park is alive. He's built a criminal organization, and he's about to do something catastrophic in Minneapolis. I need to know what happened to him after I left. I need to know who he became. Another pause. Give me an hour. 53 minutes later, a secure email arrived. Margaret read it in Detective Morrison's office, her face growing paler with each paragraph. Daniel hadn't just survived. He'd been captured by Volkov, then sold to a Russian intelligence outfit. They'd interrogated him for 3 years before realizing he wasn't actually CIPHER, just an asset. By then, he was broken, shattered. They released him, a useless tool, discarded. He'd spent the next 2 years in psychiatric care. Then he disappeared. And now he was back. What does he want? Morrison asked, reading over her shoulder. To prove he's better than me. To hurt the people who hurt him. To— Margaret stopped, looked at the equations again. Integral of love dx equals betrayal plus c. Integration. The mathematical symbol for summing up infinite tiny pieces into a whole. Daniel was telling her he'd integrated his pain into something larger, something comprehensive, something that included a constant, c. In mathematics, c was the constant of integration, unknown but essential. In Daniel's message, c stood for something specific. Margaret pulled up the University of Minnesota website, scanned the departments, stopped on one. Oh no. What? Morrison leaned in. The C, it doesn't stand for constant. It stands for chemistry. He's going to hit the chemistry department. Why? Because that's where they keep the precursor chemicals, materials that, in the wrong hands, could make explosives, or worse. She checked her watch. We have 70 hours. If he follows his pattern, he's already positioned the chemicals. Now, he's waiting to combine them. Morrison grabbed her radio. All units, I need bomb squad and hazmat at the University Chemistry Building now. They evacuated the building. Bomb dogs swept every floor. Hazmat teams checked every storage locker. Nothing. Margaret stood outside, watching the sunrise paint the campus in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful morning. Wrong answer. Daniel was too smart for a straight play. The chemistry building was misdirection, just like the banks. She pulled out the burner phone, typed a message. Nice try, but I taught you better than obvious. Where's the real target? The response came immediately. "Better. You're still sharp, teacher, but you're thinking too small. This isn't about one building. It's about the city. The pattern isn't spatial, it's temporal. Look at when, not where." Margaret pulled up her notes. The bank heists. When had they occurred? March 14th, April 11th, May 9th. She wrote the dates in numbers: 314, 411, 59. Then she saw it. 3.14, pi. 411, the start of Euler's number. E equals 2.71828 if you wrote it as month by day. 59, the golden ratio, approximately 1.618, inverted. He was using mathematical constants, and if the pattern continued, the next significant mathematical constant was the square root of 2, approximately 1.414. January 14th, today. "Morrison!" Margaret yelled. "What time is it?" 6:47 a.m. Why? 1.414. If you converted it to time, 1:41 p.m. "We have 7 hours, Margaret breathed, "and I still don't know what we're looking for." Her phone buzzed. Daniel again. "You're close, but here's a hint. I taught you that the best hiding place is in plain sight. Where does everyone in Minneapolis look but never see? Where do secrets hide in public?" Margaret thought. Where do people look but never see? Libraries. "No," she whispered, but of course he would. Daniel had a flair for the dramatic, and what better revenge than destroying the place where CIPHER had hidden for 15 years? "Riverside Library," she told Morrison. "He's going to hit Riverside Library."
They raced across town, sirens screaming. The library was already open. It was Saturday, community reading day. Families with children, elderly patrons, students studying. Margaret burst through the doors. Tyler looked up from the desk, surprised. "Margaret, you're not scheduled today. Evacuate the building, now. Fire alarm, bomb threat, I don't care. Get everyone out." "What? Why?" "Tyler, trust me, please." He saw something in her face that made him move. He pulled the fire alarm. The shrieking klaxon sent people streaming toward the exits. Margaret ran to the basement. If Daniel had planted something, it would be near the station's CIPHER files. Poetic justice in his mind. She found it, in Section G, Row 14, right where she'd shown the thieves yesterday. A device, small, elegant, professional, connected to the building's gas line. Of course, Daniel knew about the old gas heating system. She'd probably mentioned it years ago in some forgotten conversation about infrastructure vulnerabilities. The timer read 1:18:34. She had an hour and 18 minutes. Margaret took out her phone, took a picture, and sent it to Daniel. His response, "Beautiful, isn't it? I built it myself. The wiring is yours. Remember the Budapest Protocol? You taught me that pattern, so you should be able to disarm it. Should be. But I've added some modifications, improvements. To disarm it, you'll need to solve 3 puzzles. Each one references something from our past together. Each one has a time penalty if you guess wrong. Good luck, teacher." The screen on the device lit up, showing the first puzzle. "I am taken from a mine and shut up in a wooden case from which I am never released, yet I am used by almost every person. What am I?" A riddle. One of the first things she'd taught Daniel, that sometimes the best code is plain language twisted into knots. Margaret thought. Taken from a mine, wooden case, used by everyone. "Pencil lead," she said aloud. "Graphite." She typed it into the device. Graphite. The screen flashed green. Timer stopped decreasing. Then new text appeared. Correct, but the question is, which graphite? You need the periodic table number of carbon to proceed. Easy. Carbon was element 6. She entered 6. Green flash. The first panel opened, revealing complex wiring underneath. Puzzle 2, the screen read. Berlin, 2009. You left at 11:47 p.m. By what method of transportation? Margaret's breath caught. This wasn't about defusing a bomb anymore. This was confession. Daniel wanted her to relive the night she abandoned him. "Subway," she whispered. "I left by subway." She typed subway. Red flash. Timer jumped forward to 1:03:12. She'd lost 15 minutes. Wrong. Try again. 2 attempts remaining.
Margaret thought back. That night was chaos. Fire, smoke, gunshots. She'd escaped through the service entrance, but how had she left the area? Not subway. She hadn't trusted the cameras. Car? No, too traceable. Bicycle. She'd stolen a bicycle from the rack outside. She entered bicycle. Green flash. The second panel opened. Timer 01:03:05. Final puzzle, the screen read. Answer truthfully, and the device disarms. Lie, and it detonates immediately. The question, did you ever intend to come back for me? 2 buttons appeared, yes or no. Margaret stared at them. Her hand hovered over yes. Of course she should press yes. That's what would disarm the bomb, save the library, end this nightmare. But Daniel had built in a lie detector. She didn't know how. Voice stress analysis through the phone he knew she'd be carrying? Thermal imaging from a hidden camera? It didn't matter. What mattered was that he would know if she lied. And the truth was? The truth was she'd read the initial reports that said Daniel was dead, and she'd been relieved. Relieved she didn't have to go back. Relieved she could retire, could disappear, could stop being CIPHER. She'd chosen herself over him. Margaret pressed no. For a long moment, nothing happened. The timer kept counting down. 1:02:47. 1:02:46. Then the screen changed. Thank you for your honesty. The device powered down. All 3 panels clicked open. The timer stopped. Disarmed. Margaret sat back against the shelving, shaking. Her phone rang. Daniel's voice was soft. You always did have integrity, Margaret, even when it hurt. I respect that. Daniel, please, this has to stop. It already has. The bomb was the test, to see if you'd become someone who could lie to survive. But you're still you, still the woman who taught me that honor matters, even in a dishonorable profession. What happens now? Now? Now I disappear again. The equation disbands. The bank money gets anonymously returned, minus operating expenses. I'm tired, Margaret, tired of being angry, tired of living for revenge. He paused. I just needed to know if you were worth the memory, if the woman I admired was real, or just another intelligence officer playing games. I was both, Margaret said. I cared about you, Daniel. I did, but I cared about myself more. I'm sorry. I know, and weirdly, that helps. Knowing you're flawed, human, it means I can let go. There was a sound like wind over the phone. I'm at the airport. Different identity, different life. You won't hear from me again. Daniel! Goodbye, teacher. Thanks for the education. All of it.
The line went dead. Margaret sat in the basement for a long time, surrounded by the files that had caused so much trouble, holding a phone connected to nothing but memories. Tyler found her eventually. Margaret, the bomb squad says the device is safe. They're asking how you knew how to disarm it. She looked up at him. Lucky guess. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She stood, her knees protesting, and walked toward the stairs. Behind her, the station's CIPHER files sat in their boxes, filled with secrets that would never be decoded, protecting ghosts that were finally at rest. 3 weeks later, Riverside Library reopened after extensive gas line repairs. The official story satisfied everyone who didn't look too closely. Margaret returned to her desk,
her scanner, her beeping routine. Tyler brought her coffee. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about everything that happened. The hostage situation, the bomb, all of it." "Mm-hmm." Beep. "And I realized something. I still don't know who you really are." Margaret looked at him over her glasses. "Sure you do. I'm Margaret Chen, librarian, cat owner, terrible at knitting despite years of trying. That's not all you are. It's all I choose to be," she corrected gently. "The rest is just overdue books, returned and resolved." Tyler seemed to accept this. He went back to his phone. Mrs. Morrison came in at 10 a.m., right on schedule, heading for the romance section. The heating system rattled. The automatic doors whooshed open and closed, and Margaret Chen scanned books, each beep a tiny declaration of normalcy, of peace, of a life chosen over a life assigned. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "The FBI is closing the equation case. No arrests expected. Funds recovered. Your secret is safe. D." She deleted the message and blocked the number. Some books, she decided, were better left unopened. Some codes better left unsolved. She was just a librarian now, and for the first time in 20 years, she actually believed it.